Episode 5, No Stone Unturned.
The low hum of the countryside had been a constant for as long as anyone could remember. The stones were as much part of the landscape as the walls they built, ancient, unmoving, unbroken. Their family crest, a Celtic knot, etched into the stone of every wall they crafted. Their signature, a symbol of an endless loop that no one could unbind. The stones bore only sons, as though the family itself was fated to continue through the same blood, the same hands. Daniel Stone had lived his life in the shadow of that knot, inheriting his family's work as naturally as the sun rose each morning. He grew up with the sharp smell of chiseled stone and dust that weighed on his lungs, and the taste of earth on his tongue, bitter yet comforting. His hands were rough from the years of unrelenting hammering and shattering of stones, but there was something sacred about their work, how their walls stood strong long after other builders' structures had withered and crumbled away. Daniel's father, Mr. Stone, like his grandfather before him, had trained him from a very young age. The sound of stones being hammered and placed on top of one another had filled the cold air in the early hours of a late autumn morning. Daniel was helping his father repair an old wall on the edge of the village they lived in when he first noticed the whispers about the missing. He overheard two locals about the recent disappearance of a woman. Her cottage lay just beyond the wall they were restoring. "Gone!" the man said, shaking his head. "Last seen walking down the old road. By the stones this wall. Like the rest of them." Daniel couldn't help shake off the feeling that something had shifted. Like spalling stones, began flaking away. That evening Daniel turned to his father, who seemed to look rougher and paler than usual, to ask his thoughts about the missing people. Mr. Stone's expression grew tight, his eyes dark, unreadable.
Don't get involved in rumors, son. Focus on your family. Focus on the work. The stones demand respect.
Daniel thought his father's reply seemed odd, but he found comfort in the thought of his family, as Emily, Daniel's wife, was expecting a boy any day now. But as the evening grew darker, Daniel's mind was churning with unease. It was a flickering vision at first, a face buried beneath the stones, eyes wide and filled with terror. Daniel shot up, gasping, his heart hammering like the rhythmic chiseling sound that echoed in his mind. He blinked, trying to get his bearings together. It was just a dream, he tried to tell himself, but the image lingered like a ghost in the edges of his vision. The next day, he worked beside his father again. His father looked as though he aged a century overnight, his face gaunt, eyes sunken, yet the rhythm of his work was punctuated by the striking of the stones. A heavy feeling fell over Daniel, as though the very stones were watching him. As his hands moved automatically, his eyes traced the cracks and crevices between the stones. That's where he saw it. Faces, distorted, silent screams, their mouths twisted in agony. Daniel's breath quickened, then he dropped his chisel.
Focus!
Mr. Stone snapped, his voice sharp. Daniel could barely hear him, his head spinning, images flashing like strobe light in his head, faces, hands reaching out, bodies buried beneath the stone walls they had built. Mr. Stone's eyes darkened, and for a moment Daniel saw something he had not seen before, something that has always been there hiding, a shadow, something ancient and cold.
The stones demand. The stones remember. The stones provide.
Daniel's breath caught in his throat. The missing people? His father's eyes flickered.
They are part of the land, part of the walls. Do not bind them.
What did we do? Daniel staggered back, the weight of the truth crashing down on him like the stones of the ancient Heliopolis. His family hadn't just been building walls. They had been building graves. Silent, secret graves. The missing weren't lost. They were entombed. Daniel felt the cold grip of horror tighten around his heart. His hands were stained with years of dust, were complicit. Every wall they built had been a monument of unspeakable darkness.
It's time,
his father muttered, low and hard. Time for what? Daniel demanded, trying to find meaning behind his visions and father's words. Mr. Stone slowly turned towards his son, barely able to lift his hammer and chisel as he gestured for his son to take the burden. His body looked shriveled, as his very essence was sucked out.
Eternal life. For us. For you.
Then it finally all made sense. The family crest, the fact that only sons were born into the Stone family. The way their walls never crumbled. The stones didn't just stand the test of time because of craftsmanship. They held something within them, something alive, something bound by the Stone family's work. A hungering, ancient curse, fed by the stones. Daniel's breath caught. This is why I'm seeing them, isn't it? The bodies, the faces, those horrors. His father nodded.
It's time for the tools to pass to you. I can hold them no more. The walls are calling me. They will call for you too one day.
Daniel hesitantly reached out, and in that instantaneous moment as Daniel took his father's tools, his father passed, consumed by the very wall they had been working on. Then a sharp cry rang out of the Stone's house.
Not unbroken, ancient, eternal, unrelenting. The cycle continues.